Hello and welcome to Rage Quit. My name is Jay, and today I'm going to be wildly speculating about Warhammer the Old World. Yes, I know that this game is not due out for 3 years, which makes it insane to talk about. But there was a little bit of an article that Games Workshop published on their website, which made me want to speculate. And I want to speculate in one way which I think is actually likely to happen. That I think that what this game is aiming at. And then secondly, which is a little bit more out there. And so we'll start with the one that's actually probably likely to happen. So we'll talk about what brought this on first, and that is that this article, which is, they've hinted about what is to come. Did they? I'm not even sure they did hint about what is to come. They hinted about square bases, but I'm not really 100% sure. But it's showing the map of the old world in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. Now, the couple of interesting things here is that, we get this next little animation which appears to be showing different factions of humans, or the Empire factions if you want, or maybe they won't be the Empire at this stage because it appears to be older than when Warhammer Fantasy was, if that makes sense. And then it shows the two ladies actually putting that on the map, although they've painted that on the map and then they appear to have animated it, so I'm not 100% sure why they did that. But either way, it literally just repeats that, and you might be thinking Jay, this is seriously not much to go off. And yeah, I'm not even going to speculate on this. I know Varrak did, talking about Sigismund and how it might be all that kind of stuff in the past. But what really interests me here is the focus, what appears to be on humans. And when this game was first announced, and I did the first video on this, I said, hey, this might be the reason they may have done this game in the first place or announced it is because of the likes of A Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones game, and perhaps the Mantic universe as well. But I think maybe A Song of Ice and Fire. And for those of you who've seen Game of Thrones, as far as I know, there aren't, apart from dragons, spoilers, there aren't really proper alien races. I say alien races, not aliens. Do you know what I mean? I don't fantasy races. From what I can see, there are no orcs. They might end up being in the books or what have you, but it's human focus with human desires. The throne, isn't it? That's the whole point of the show in the books, kind of thing. Now, this sort of implies to me more that is even more the case, because now this appears to be saying, hey, actually, we're going to concentrate this old world, perhaps have it more empire, human focused with different factions, all talking about, who's the emperor and all this kind of good stuff. And that, in my head, if we're going to have a human focused fantasy game, instead of all your orcs and your elves and your seraph and all whatever, it even more to suggest that we'll get it perhaps is, I don't want to say a retaliation to Game of Thrones, but for sure, that's the same kind. In Game of Thrones, the games, every race is, all the factions are just human factions. So it's not that it's not possible to do a game based on human factions. Then you could sprinkle in your dark elves, your high elves, your old classics that people like, but have them be, you might have multiple factions of humans with then the odd extra flavor faction. So I think this map perhaps implies that. And as I think the positioning for this game would go, it's going back to square bases. Mantic's games on square bases, A Song of Ice and Fire is on square bases. It sort of would make sense that they're taking aim at those guys, and that's the gist of this game. Now, it is just a map. So let's not get too excited. My alternative theory, which I actually sort of don't believe, but I think could be the case, is that you could end up... Now, the thing is, I was going to say you could end up with a skirmish game. Now, the problem here is I think a skirmish game on square bases doesn't really make that much sense. If they were going to make a skirmish game, I don't think you would make a square-based skirmish game, not in 2020, even though this is actually more like 2022. I think you would not have it be skirmish. I don't know, this light is flickering, it's doing my nutting, and it's actually green and yellow in real life, but on the video it's red. I really need the grey in this room just messing with the white balance. So I think, when I say a skirmish game, I'm thinking maybe more along the lines of, say, Mordheim, and maybe, Warcry, instead of it being Warcry being Age of Sigmar, you could in theory have a game that was more like Mordheim and Warhammer Fantasy Old School. Now, I don't think that is going to be the case, or at least that's not going to be the main game, I don't think, because they've announced it with like square bases and old world and fantasy. There'll be people who played 8th edition and prior to that who'll be like clamoring for that. Perhaps it'd be harsh to dangle that carrot in front of everybody and be like, "Woo, we are giving you the old world back," and then at the last minute just be like, "Actually, it's a skirmish game on square bases." Like, I don't see it, but I could envision the way that Warcry is essentially chaos-based skirmish game. It could sort of make sense to have an empire-based skirmish game, a la sort of like Mordheim. I'm not ruling it out, but then again, I think they could just do a fantasy like add-on to Warcry. I don't know why they would make another game, and the fact the square bases are heavily implying like a rank and file game. So I'm not ruling in a skirmish, like a human version of Warcry. One, because of the bases, and two, because they've dangled the carrot of the old world. I think it's more likely now, in the fact that these images here are sort of like implying the many different factions, although I think there's only 4, the several different factions of the humans. You probably have Bretonians as well, for the lady. And, then you can sprinkle in your extra races. I think that sort of implies more that they're definitely saying, hey, we've noticed A Song of Ice and Fire. We see Game of Thrones is really popular. People like human fantasy battle games, especially with Lord of the Rings on the way as well, the TV show with Amazon. I think for me, it just sort of makes sense that that's where they're aiming it for, and that's what they're doing, rather than a skirmish game. But there's too many. I think they would annoy too many people if they did a skirmish game. But I wouldn't be surprised if either this year we get something like Mordheim, or even after this game comes out, we then get a skirmish game based on it. But whether or not they'd keep the square bases, I honestly don't know. So it's a little bit of speculation at the moment. I don't really know too much of the history of Warhammer Fantasy. I was never really a lore person. I know Valric's video, he's talking about Sigismund. There was actually many different people called Sigismund, and I'm like, damn, were there? Like, well, I don't know. All I know is Dark Elves like killing people sometimes. And I'm really, to be fair, I think Age of Sigmar like style is good, the models are good, but there was just, I don't know if it is nostalgia, and it could very easily be, but there's just something about the Warhammer Fantasy races that I really like, and the Dark Elves in particular, ones that stand out for me. So I'm excited, and that's why I'm probably speculating on absolutely nothing. Do you think we actually learned anything? Do you agree with me that this is actually more of a sign that this is almost certainly like Games Workshop saying, we've noticed A Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones and we're doing something about it? That's what it feels like to me, even more so with this news. Let me know what your thoughts are. Would you like to see Mordheim or a skirmish game based on humans, those crazy creatures? Let me know in the comments. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.